Hey guys, this is Echo Soundworks, and you're checking out a plugin of the week tip and trick tutorial video on ADSR. So this is going to be kicking off a new series here on the ADSR network, where once a week, maybe every 5 to 10 days, I'm going to do a video highlighting a specific plugin or a specific style of plugin that I've just been using for the past, X amount of time for mixes, productions, sound design, or otherwise. Now, these plugins can be new, old, free, cheap, really anything. I just wanted to share with you some cool tips and tricks or techniques that have been actually happening in my real life, in my real world situations with mixing and production and sound design. And in this video, we'll be looking at a transient shaper made by Softube. Now, with these videos, you don't have to run out and be like, oh shit, I need to go buy that exact same plugin. You could if you really liked how it sounded in the video, but more importantly, just take note of the class or the type of processing or effects or plugins that I'm using. There are tons of alternatives to this transient shaper. This is a really good transient shaper. I really like how clean it is. It has some really unique options, but there's ones made by Native Instruments, Melda Production. I believe PSP Audio has one, and there's tons of them that I'm going to miss because I don't have all these memorized, obviously. But most DAWs come with a transient shaper. Logic comes with the enveloper, but it doesn't sound as clean as the PSP does, and I needed a really clean option for what I wanted to do in this demo or in this little video here. So a transient shaper is, I'm going to do something real annoying here. I'm going to define something using one of the words in the title. It literally allows you to shape your sounds, but I like to think of it as it gives you a certain amount of ADSR envelope style control over audio. So I use them quite a bit on guitars and vocals and drums. The past week or so, I've pulled up this transient shaper probably 3 or 4 times, and I used it on a vocal track, I used it on electric guitars, and I used it on a snare drum as well. So you can, with this specific transient shaper, you can really sculpt your sounds in terms of the sustain of the sound and the punch. I typically find myself using, I would say it's a 50-50 mix between when I use punch and when I use sustain. Maybe you have a kick that isn't punchy enough. You can turn the punch knob, and it basically is letting you shape the attack, the initial attack stage of that sound. And we're going to check that out in this video. We're going to check it out on a few sources. So the first thing we're going to do is just listen to this demo real quick, and then we're going to start messing around with it on this purple track. All right, so I already have it on this track, and in this one, it was a pluck from a hardware synth, and I didn't want to go replay it and plug things back in, so I was like, well, shit, I'll just use a transient shaper. You can see here visually on the audio that the energy decreases over time, and let's say hypothetically this was the main lead of this section of a track. That could be a bad thing, right? So what I did was I used the transient shaper to increase the sustain. Right? To make it sound natural, though, the amount of sustain that you add to a track like this can't be more than the actual attack. So I just messed around with it. There it is off. And there it is more even. You can see the gain change here really easily on the interface. So let's say this pluck wasn't punchy enough and it wasn't cutting through the mix. I could add some punch to it. Now I'm going to add a little bit of punch just to help it stick out into the mix. Now the cool thing about the Softube Transient Shaper is you can kind of narrow in and hone where you want it to affect, high, wide, or low for the frequencies, which is really cool. Then you have fast and slow, kind of like a punch type, which is really nice. So I'm going to keep it on fast for this. So that is one way that we could shape the sound. And if you're wondering why you'd use a transient shaper over like a compressor or a limiter or parallel compression or any combo of those, it just sounds different. It's a little bit more musical sometimes. It really depends on the source. And again, I've just been using it the past week or so quite a bit, so I thought I would share it with you. Now, let's look at this sound and let's get more creative with it. Let's say let's say you had an audio track where there was too much sustain and you want to go the opposite direction. Well, we can make this much more plucky. Right, and then let's turn on some delay as we do that. turn it off, A/B it here. You know, so they actually give you some really cool creative tools to actually shape the sound. It's not just mix rescue and that sort of stuff. All right, let's go down to the kick. Okay, let's try applying. We're gonna pull up the. Let's copy and paste it. It doesn't seem to be right under there. So we're gonna pull up the transient designer on to the kick, and I'm gonna add a little bit more punch to the kick. Okay, so I'm gonna keep it on high frequencies because I don't want more sub coming through, right? So let's keep it on high. All right, so just adding a little bit of punch and snap to the initial attack of the sound. Now, I did actually already have the transient shaper on the snare. I use transient shapers quite a bit on drum samples because you obviously don't get a lot of control over drum samples, whether they're made at tempo that's 20 beats slower than your song, or there's a lot of delay or reverb potentially. It's nice to have transient shapers because you can turn all that down. This specific snare rang out a little bit more than I wanted. I wanted a real short, snappy snare. And I turned down the sustain on the transient shaper to do that. Right, so really quickly we could change the whole feeling of certain elements within this track just using a transient shaper. So if you guys have never used one or you've never messed around with ones that you already do have, definitely check them out. The one by Softube is really dope, has some really nice features, but regardless, transient shapers can be a lifesaver when you're trying to mix your track. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm Echo Soundworks. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.